Evangelion 3.0+1.0 did something I didn't think was possible for a piece of media to do to me in the year of 2021. It produced within me a feeling that was similar to my response to the original Neon Genesis Evangelion 1995 series. It wasn't the same exact feeling, but the sequence of emotions it led me to reflect on, fear, despair, loneliness, and finally hope, took me back to recognizing those own emotions within myself when watching the original series as a disaffected teenager in the mid-2000s. It's also a movie that adds an additional coda to what Evangelion has meant to so many in the decades of success it has enjoyed since its debut, attaching some new layers of meaning to the series as a whole. Evangelion 3.0+1.0 Thrice Upon a Time is therefore a fitting title. It's a cinematic artifact that takes different chunks of the Evangelion experience and adds them together in an attempt to synthesize something completely new. For the most part, it succeeds, acting as a highly emotive epilogue to several decades of subversive storytelling. Evangelion 3.0+1.0 is a feature film that feels composed of three distinct parts. The first of these parts embeds our characters of Shinji, Rei, and Asuka in a rural lifestyle that directly juxtaposes with the harsh red blanket that covers the earth as a result of Shinji's actions. Our characters are essentially given space to heal in nature, and there was something inherently fulfilling to this premise to me. If you've been following the series from the beginning, you've already witnessed these characters experience so much misery on screen that it's simply nice to witness the characters resolve their emotional obstacles in the idealized beauty of Studio Ghibli movies. Seriously, this first act looks like a Studio Ghibli movie. It becomes patently obvious that these chilled out vibes cannot last into the movie's second act, and as one violent event tears it all away, I felt a sense of loss for the slice of life Evangelion AU that this first act was crafting. The early stage of Evangelion 3.0+1.0 Thrice Upon a Time also does an incredible job of contextualizing the other movies in the rebuild of Evangelion saga. One of my frustrations with 3.0 was feeling like the 15-year time skip that film hinges upon was never fully explored to my satisfaction. The first third of 3.0+1.0 Thrice Upon a Time does a tremendous job of explaining things that previously felt glossed over, for the sake of perceived narrative focus. The secondary characters of Kaji and Masato were given really important moments in this movie, which felt like something the prior movie sorely lacked or neglected. What the people of Earth have been up to in the interim since the near third impact was also something I wanted more context on before, and this movie delivered. This movie retroactively improves my opinion of the preceding movie. Aspects that felt underserved in that title are given more attention in this movie, and many questions are directly addressed to the point where it all feels more clearly planned out than I ever thought it might have been. The second section of the movie is a more grandiose crusade, where the sci-fi lore of the narrative and the emotional circumstances begin to inexorably intertwine. Shinji faces up to his responsibilities and boards the Wunder, having conversations with other characters that seek to highlight his personal growth. When the ship takes off and the plan is set in motion, suddenly a torrent of new terminology is thrown at the audience. We're travelling to the depths of the anti-universe, encountering swarms of Ava infinities, and injecting angel blood in a flurry of pseudo-symbolism. You have to let 3.0+1.0 Thrice Upon a Time's expansive index of new lore footnotes wash over you during this sequence, as there's barely enough time to come to terms with everything it throws at you. Despite this, I was endlessly entertained by this movie's extended final battle, which crammed a cavalcade of new Evangelion and Angel designs into a highly creative diving sequence. As a fan of mecha and an appreciator of Evangelion's design philosophy in this area, there's a lot to love in terms of new aesthetic elements throughout this area of the movie, even when some of the new terminology eludes easy interpretation. These signs and signifiers of the upcoming apocalypse are plentiful and often awe-inspiring in 3.0+1.0, but rarely mean as much as the character drama that underpins it. There's a lot of clumsiness in the way that this second act throws out these terms constantly at you, and you're just kind of expected to know what it means. Like, they literally say the term Nebuchadnezzar key. There was something with lances. I thought I understood what the lances meant in the previous movie. It turns out I didn't. There's just different lance rules in this movie. But moving on. At some point during the second act, the circumstances of the characters and their ambitions once again take center stage. The gambit led against the indomitable Gendo Ikari plays right into his hand, and the movie reaches a dramatic crescendo in the form of a scenario that is archetypal of the series' primary conflict. Shinji is the only one left who can pilot Evangelion Unit 1. The emotional reconciliation of Misato and Shinji that precedes the movie's final act is one that feels particularly satisfying. Misato in the preceding movie was clearly walking a dark path, something that the first act of this movie further elucidates, drawing clear parallels between Gendo's parental neglect and Misato's own failings. It's one of the many profound character moments in the film. There's too many to list and meaningfully comment upon. A lot was packed into this final installment when it comes to characterization. Every character felt like the best version of themselves, in terms of individual narrative arcs. Asuka and Rei get competent twists on arcs we've seen them experience in other parts of the Evangelion story, and it was refreshing to see aspects of these characters expanded upon. It's certainly not the most detailed depiction of these particular characters, but it was an interesting one. When we reach the anti-universe, dialogue illuminates upon the imaginative capacity to rewrite reality as a whole. This is the point where the film drops the rulebook into the Red Ocean and allows the relationship between Shinji and Gendo, alongside the personal feelings of Asuka, Kaoru, and Rei, to inform the visuals that carry us through the movie's conclusion. The final act of 3.0+1.0 reminds us of something obvious. The sci-fi filter that the series blankets itself in is nothing more than an aesthetic coating atop a raw human story about the nature of being. This is never more clear than in 3.0+1.0's robust climactic battle, which forces Gendo and Shinji to acknowledge and accept their own behaviours and simply have a conversation. The most powerful moments of this movie are the conversations between these two characters who would rather do anything but talk to each other. Gendo Ikari is given more depth than ever before through this sequence, and the parallels between Gendo and Shinji that have always been subtextually present are brought out into the spotlight. The style switch to communicate Gendo's backstory is an especially neat touch, conveying the character in a way that I didn't think was ever going to happen. The successful rewrite of the universe in a way that allows us to say goodbye to all Evangelions is one that feels earned. As previously mentioned, these characters have been through enough on-screen and off-screen trauma for several lifetimes. They've earned the right to an abstract happy ending, in my mind. The final shots are vague enough to speculate about what has actually happened, clear enough to let us know that all the characters we care about are safe and free to shape their next chapter. It's hard in this review to convey exactly why Evangelion 3.0+1.0 resonated with me so much. In this regard, words fail me. I could write for days about the various good things about this movie, and some bad things as well, and I feel as though this review has only scratched the surface of what I think about it overall. Part of me feels like abandoning the formal conventions for a review entirely, and just wailing uncontrollably about my emotions. This is largely due to the emotional role that Evangelion has played in my life, and my deep attachment to the characters who I could see aspects of myself in as I was growing up. The original Neon Genesis Evangelion helped me to recognize my own potential to grow and change beyond the neuroses and trauma that I believed was holding me back. I know it's a series that did the same for many others, and most people who love Evangelion have a connection to it founded on being able to resonate with the characters' struggles. It's therefore cathartic to get to see these characters move beyond them in a more tangible way in Evangelion 3.0+1.0 thrice upon a time. The end of this movie made me sigh in relief. Evangelion 3.0+1.0 is a movie that I never thought I'd receive, a more definitively happy epilogue to a series that played an instrumental role in my life. Evangelion is a series that I'm always going to come back to, and some aspects of the prior Rebuild movies had left me worried that I'd only ever get to hold the original series in that high regard. I'm happy to say that there's now two versions of the Evangelion story to experience, and the two of them, the original series and the Rebuild saga, complement each other beautifully. Evangelion 3.0+1.0 is the final artistic flourish in an incredible sequence of works, and if you've ever enjoyed Evangelion, one that you owe it to yourself to experience.